What is up? Welcome to the Walkshow podcast. This is your host, Walker Neer. I want to mention up front that you can follow me at Twitter at the Walkshow Pod, Instagram and Facebook at the Walkshow. You can also always email me at walker@thewalkshowpodcast.com. If you like the show, I do invite you to take a moment to like, rate, subscribe, whatever your app lets you do, to help the show be more discoverable. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, that's actually one of the bigger podcast platforms, and a lot of the other podcast distributors actually pull directly from Apple. But either way, again, just to help more people be able to find the show. I also want to give a shout out to my other podcast, Pick Up Your Sticks, which is a video game podcast that I host with my friend Brett Lindley, who's been a guest on the Walk Show several times. We used to sprinkle in some video game episodes into the Walk Show, and instead of continuing that trend, Brett and I actually decided to partner up and create Pick Up Your Sticks. So if you enjoy kind of the long-form conversations that we have here on the Walk Show, but also enjoy gaming, then again, Pick Up Your Sticks. You can find that on Twitter at PUYSPod. Also, just on all the streaming podcast platforms, just like the Walk Show, Pick Up Your Sticks is available. Again, for gaming. If gaming's not your thing, then that's all right. Just stay here on the Walk Show, and probably won't have any more episodes really about gaming, because that's the whole point of Pick Up Your Sticks, and we can kind of really get into the nitty gritty of it all there, which is what we were excited about. The other thing with Pick Up Your Sticks is that it's not just news and reviews or something like that. It's really Brett and I trying to identify why gaming matters, and talking about, current games coming out, games that we're playing, and just our own personal experiences and memories and I don't know, personal insights into why different games or gaming experiences have mattered to us, and then, maybe how they've also influenced the culture at large. On today's show, I do want to thank very much Corey Johnson for joining the show. Corey is a talented musician here in the Springfield area, and has some really interesting insights on music and kind of on the local music scene, and some really interesting experiences. I really had a blast talking with Corey, and I think you'll enjoy it too. Music for today's show is a little split. We will have music from Misha, as always. However, we also, towards the end of the episode, have a song from Corey and a friend of his named Nate White, who has an album that features a song with Corey on it. And then also, at the end of the episode, the song that will kind of take us out of the episode is also another song from Nate White and Corey Johnson collaborating on that. Without further ado, let's jump into the conversation with Corey. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Walk Show podcast. Today we're joined by Corey Johnson. Corey, thank you so much for joining the show. How you doing today?
Hey, good evening, Walker. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I've known you for a few years now, and you have been a talented musician for that entire time. I'm going to guess probably prior to meeting me. That's not true for a lot of people. A lot of people meet me, and that's really what kind of puts them on the path.
Their careers take off.
Correct.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, well, and if it wasn't from meeting me, it's from being on this show with the dozens of listeners that we have.
Well,
so
that's what I'm counting on.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah. I'll split the ad revenue with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted to talk to you about your music. So you currently play trumpet in a band, is that correct?
Yeah, so I do a few different things. Trumpet, I started playing trumpet when I was a kid. When I was 8 years old, I started playing.
Oh, wow.
So I played my whole life, and currently I've been really doing more freelance trumpet work than anything else. I've always played a trumpet in the bands that I've been in for the most part, except for a current project that I do with my daughter right now. We play more kind of folk Americana acoustic type
Mm-hmm.
music around town and in the area, and we sing, and so when I do that, it's guitar. Whether it be electric or acoustic, depending on where we're at and what size of the venue and the event and that kind of thing. But trumpet, like I said, I started playing when I was 8 years old, and went all the way through school and played into college at Missouri State, which was
Oh,
SMS
wow.
at the time. Yeah, so I did a couple years there, and I did the Pride Marching Band, and I did the Lady Bear Band, and I did the concert band and jazz band and all that stuff into college, and then kind of set it aside a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
tried to graduate college and start a career and a family and all that stuff, and just would pick it up for like if I played at a church or if I played for a friend's wedding or just something occasionally, and then started playing again. Oh, I want to say it was probably around 2009, 2008, 2009. And then have been a part of bands since that point, like playing out regularly. And like I said, through just the progression of what I've been involved in, it's kind of led me in a path to a really pretty sweet spot right now, where I've made a ton of connections in this area, in the Springfield music scene. And I've been playing more trumpet with bands that normally don't have horns. So like,
Okay.
rock bands, or one-off projects like I did a ska tribute night where we played Save Ferris music from the 90s. And so I played, we prepared for that show and played that show, and then that was done. And we might do it again. I played in a John Mayer tribute show not too long ago, played trumpet for that. There's a recording studio out of Republic, Missouri called Audio in Motion. They do these, they're called something like one take videos or something like that, one take sessions. But they basically they'll get a group of musicians, and they'll send you some material or even just a video and say, hey, we want to cover this song. Can you come out on this night? And so basically you show up, you run through it a couple times, and then they record you. And so I've been, due to trumpet work, and just getting recognized more and getting known for that, I've been doing a lot of those, and that's led me into other things. And so the one big thing that I just did, this is a big roundabout way of answering your question, but
No, you're good. You're good. This is interesting.
yeah. So the biggest thing that I've been involved in really in my musical career, more or less, but also lately, is I played in this tribute show to a group called Granny's Bathwater. And Granny's Bathwater was a funk soul, kind of southern rock mesh of music of a group from Springfield, based in Springfield back in the 60s and 70s. They kind of came up at the same time that Ozark Mountain Daredevils. Some of the members of each group kind of interchanged at different times, and they've had a lot of loss through the years, because they haven't played in over 40 years together, and
Wow.
guys have passed away. Different things have happened, but there's still a handful of them around. And so I got called to play trumpet in this group due to some relationships that I've built in the scene with some other horn players, and so I was able to get to do that, and as a part of that, we were able to start as a tribute, which was simply a bunch of young guys, and I call myself young, I'm not that young, but a bunch of guys in the community that were going to just learn their songs, add some other covers in, and just have a tribute night to the band. It's just kind of say, hey, most people don't know about Granny's Bathwater. Let's do this show. Let's, blow it out and have a good time. But then a couple of the other, the original members that are left, I think there's 5 of them around, wanted to become a part of that. So they, one at a time, kind of slowly started showing up, and then it just morphed and evolved into this awesome experience where it became not only a tribute show, but it was like a reunion show.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so we played at the Riff, and this was just Friday night, so I'm still kind of
Oh,
floating,
wow.
floating from it,
Yeah.
because it was awesome. We packed out the Riff. I think there was between 350 and 400 people in there, and
Wow.
the median age was older. I mean, I would say probably median age was right around 60 something, because it was a lot of people that grew up with these guys and knew these guys from back in the day and would go
Mm-hmm.
see them, and they had a good run, man. They toured the U.S., they toured up into Canada, they opened for Martha Reeves and the Vandells, which was a Motown recording artist. They played 2 sold out nights at Madison Square Garden in New York City. They've had residencies in New Orleans and down in Florida. I mean, in Atlanta, and they were kind of a big deal for a while. And so the being a part of this for me was kind of and some of the other horn players too, was kind of an emotional deal in that it was kind of a culmination of relationships and hard work and not having a lot of opportunities with horn bands, in this area into this
Mm-hmm.
kind of we brought this group back and reintroduced them to the Springfield scene, and it was really awesome. And so so that is when it's hard for me to say when somebody says you play trumpet in a group or in a band. It's like, well, I actually play trumpet for whoever asks. And
Right.
yeah, and so the Granny's Bathwater tribute, we've been working on it hard since I think I jumped in May.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2 to 3 rehearsals a week since May.
Wow. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a lot. And part of it was the original guys, they wanted it done right, and
Mm-hmm.
they knew people were going to be coming, and they knew those people would have a high expectation from what they
Mm-hmm.
remembered. And so we would just woodshed these songs, pick them apart, chord by chord, note by note, rhythm by rhythm. And as a horn section, we do sectionals, which I haven't done that since college, where it's like
Yeah.
we just sit down and we'll play things like really slow and just make sure rhythms are right and notes are right. At the same time, the rhythm section is doing their own sectional. At the same time, the vocalists are doing their own sectional. And then we would come together for rehearsals as a full band and just put it together. And it was really great. It was really awesome. So that was like, that's kind of the forefront of my brain right now. I still walk
Yeah.
around,
No, I bet.
humming and whistling the songs because we've been working on them they're in there, they're tattooed on my brain. But yeah, I've had some really cool opportunities with the trumpet for the last several years that I wouldn't have had just like 5 years ago. Like there's a band called Mood Ring Circus in town. They're a recording band, and they've done some small tours, and but they're a rock band here, and they hire us as a horn section. When I say us, it's a couple guys that play trombone that switch out on their availability. Chris Vanderpool and Josh Randolph kind of come in and out depending on who can do it. And then Ryan Dunn, who's a local saxophone player, he plays in Branson, but he plays all over this area. And then myself on trumpet. And so the 3 of us get pulled in on a lot of different projects to play. And so it's pretty awesome. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons that I took up guitar and singing at
Mm-hmm.
one point was I wanted to play out, but no one was looking for a trumpet player,
Sure.
6-7 years ago. So I was like, well, I kind of want to do this. So learned guitar and just started getting a hold of other musicians. But through time and through, the change in the music scene in Springfield, it's become more welcoming for horns to be a part of groups and ensembles again. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. I had no idea that that there was a band from that long ago in Springfield that was that relevant. That's
Exactly.
interesting.
Most people didn't. I mean, they really established the scene, along with the Ozark Mountain Daredevils, who became kind of the synonymous
Yes.
band for the area. They made it big. Well, Granny's had a lot of success. And this is coming from the older fellows that were the original members. I don't think they admit that they didn't handle their business quite right back in the day. They're all young, having a great time, living in the 60s and 70s,
Right.
and and so the stories, oh my God, the stories. And but they learned a lot, and listening to them, they would have handled it differently, obviously, and
Sure.
the couple of the members were key members were killed in a car wreck.
Oh man.
At one point, and that kind of devastated their forward progress as well. But yeah, the recordings by these guys are amazing. I mean, they're really good music. So it was really exciting to learn about them, and then to meet them, and then to play with them, and play their songs. It was really awesome.
Yeah, that's like the coolest version of like a cover band kind of experience that you could have, right? Like most cover bands never would meet the act that they're actually portraying. And I guess it's a tribute show, so you're not a cover group, but you know what I mean? Same kind of idea, at least.
Yeah, but let alone have the opportunity to play with them.
That's what I feel. Not just meet, but actually get on stage with them.
And that's the thing that what worked out well for me is the original trumpet player. He still plays. His name is Larry Getz, and he still plays in the area. He sits in on jazz ensembles and gets asked to do little recording projects and different things like that. But he turned 78 the other night, and
oh wow,
yeah, and I know he's had a little bit of trouble with some teeth and some different things, but man, the guy can still play outstanding. And so he and I from the start kind of made a deal where he said basically, if I can hit the high notes, he'll work with me on the rhythms, and then when we play together, we'll pick harmonies that work together, so we're not trying to battle each other through these parts. And so we kind of formed a nice bond, from early on. He would take a lot of the solos because he is good at that, and I mean he tore up the solos on the songs that he did. And then my expectation was there's these parts with some really high notes, and I needed to hit those, and so I did my part, he did his part. When we put it together, it was really pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, just from listening to this, and I actually have another buddy that I know that just recently decided he was working as a teacher at Springfield Music, and then he's also was working, I think, at a grocery store, and he decided to scrap the grocery store gig because he thinks he was like, I'm pretty sure I can replace that income with performances.
Yeah.
And I just had no idea that the Springfield, I mean, I guess I'm just old despite being in my 30s, but I just don't get out, because I had no idea the Springfield music scene was that cool. Like, I thought that there was, I don't know. I mean, obviously I've seen you play live before, back in some other groups that you used to be in back in the day. And not that I've never been to a good live music experience here, but I just kind of thought that they were few and far between. But it sounds like it's pretty common, actually.
It really is. It's a pretty exciting time right now. There's a lot of original artists that are emerging from Springfield and making their mark, and they're recording here now. So a lot of times you'd have to kind of try to be known so that you could get signed, or you could get accepted by a recording studio somewhere else, and then go to a bigger city and do that. Well, there's different recording studios and things happening here, not to mention just the advancement in technology where people are able to record their own stuff and then put it out and use social media and try to create a buzz. But along with that, there's just a ton of really good musicians in Springfield, a lot of creative people, and along with the encouragement of developing venues in town, like you got the big ones that people know about. The Riff is a really awesome place. Then you have like the Galois, as far as a bigger venue. There, Crave, which used to be Cartoons, which actually just shut down. But for years they were a huge supporter of live music. So there's some bigger, bar venues, but then there are a ton of smaller places like Dublin's Pass and 4x4 Brewing, Tie and Timber, Mother's Brewing, a lot of little locations. Vino Cellars. My daughter and I play at Vino Cellars on Republic Road all the time, and so there has been an acceptance and an emergence of people and places that are wanting live music. And so as they've started to, allow musicians to come in and play, it's flourished the scene. And I think, when I look back to when I was in college in the 90s, the mid and late 90s, there was just a few places in town. Like there was the Regency, and they bring in touring groups, and then like on a Wednesday or a Tuesday you could catch local acts, and then there's like Nathan P. Murphy's. Occasionally you could go see a buddy play music there, and that was a big shift because talking to these guys, I guess there was a hot music scene in the 60s and 70s, and then it kind of died out in the 80s, and kind of then came to a crawl in the 90s, and now has started to reconnect and get people back out. But there's a live scene of cover groups, and so some are good, some are not the best. So you can go out on any night and hear music. But if you pick the right spot, man, you can really catch some very talented people in Springfield right now.
There's a group called the Mixtapes. Are they local to here?
They are. Yep, they're all from Springfield. Okay. Yeah, and they play 90s rock. They mix in a little bit of pop and stuff like that. But yeah, like Members Only, the Mixtapes, Machine Gun Symphony. There's a few groups like that are going to play era covers. So 90s, 80s, that kind of stuff, and they're good. And man, what I give them props for, whether I like what they're doing or not, they put on a show. They got lights, they've got production, the guys, they know how to play their instruments, and they sound good. So you got to give them credit because they're entertaining. So you want to have a big event, you call those guys up, you're going to have a party because that's what they do.
Right. Yeah, I saw Machine Gun Symphony at like the Wing or the Chili Cook-Off that they do.
Yeah.
They were there, and yeah, it's not really my genre of music that I would pick, but they definitely did, as you just said, they put on a really good performance, and they were very into it, and everyone who does like that kind of music that was there seemed to be very excited by
exactly. Yep.
So I'm not mad at them.
Right. Exactly.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so when it's funny because those guys, Members Only, had really kind of put their hooks into the scene along with Machine Gun Symphony back when I started Brookline Station, the band that you came and opened for us with your comedy act. And
there we call it that.
Yeah, I was doing air quotes, but you couldn't see it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Just kidding. But so when we put that band together, one of the big things that I was really pretty steadfast on was we were going to do a totally different genre than those guys were all doing, because there were a lot of bands playing Southern rock and playing 80s hair band music,
right.
And they were getting booked, and people really liked it, but I just didn't want to do that. So that was a big thing that, when we put that group together, and I said, and we're not wearing wigs and we're not wearing spandex, so why would we play that music,
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen a cover band. Actually, I mean, again, I saw Machine Gun Symphony, like I just said, but I don't know that I've ever I didn't go to the Chili Cook-Off to see them.
Yeah, right.
I don't know that I've ever set out to see a cover band specifically. I have the cover band thing is interesting, and I get it, especially if you're trying to play at like bars and stuff. That to some extent you need some songs that people are familiar with, so that so that the crowd can kind of get engaged. But I always thought it would be like the ultimate joke to myself would be to do stand-up comedy as a cover comedian and just do other people's bits,
They're just,
which is, they call you a hack if you do that and you don't say it.
right.
But if I just went up and I was like, all right, and this next joke is from Dave Chappelle's comedy special, Killing 'Em Softly in 2001, and then just do a Dave Chappelle routine. Like,
Yeah.
However, unfortunately with comedy, so much comes across in like the way that things are said and the specific language that is used. And I think with some of my favorite comedians, I probably wouldn't be socially accepted to replicate,
Right.
like I can't do Chris Rock's Bring the Pain from 1995, even though that is one of my all-time favorite stand-up specials. That's not going to go well for me.
I like the idea. I like where you're going though.
The problem is that it's like a comedian's joke where it would be really funny to anyone else doing comedy, but the crowd would probably not very much.
They're like, what the heck is this? This is ridiculous.
Yes. Well, so when you were talking earlier about, like you'd played trumpet all through your childhood and into college and then kind of put it down and just played intermittently. I mean, is playing an instrument like that kind of like riding a bike where you just remember how to do it even if you haven't done it for a long time?
Yes and no. There is a muscle memory involved, just like any activity or any sport or anything. And especially with trumpet is so different. You utilize so many different things. So not only just the like I said, muscle memory of remembering what keys to push. You have your 3 keys. So what makes a C versus a A versus a D or whatever. But you have to use what's called your embouchure. And the embouchure is within basically the corners of your mouth, the muscles. And so as you're, pushing air, you have to squeeze your mouth and you have to buzz your lips. And so that buzz is determined, the pitch of that buzz, which goes into the horn, is determined by the corners of your mouth and your embouchure and those muscles that kind of ring around your lips. And so if you don't play regularly, then you lose your fitness in your chops.
So you're like motorboating the horn the whole time is what you're telling me right now.
Yeah, well, you could say that. And I would expect for you to say that.
I think that's insulting, but I'm not sure.
No, but it's the truth, and that's what I hear a lot of people talk about. They're like, oh, I played back in high school, but there's no way I could do it now, and they're not entirely wrong in the fact that you just have to practice a lot. Like right now, my chops, my embouchure, and my trumpet strength is probably right now as strong as it ever has been because we have been practicing and rehearsing so much.
Right.
And so, I've been pushing up to those high notes and I've been playing for lengths of, hours at a time on a nightly basis for months. And so right now, if I just stopped cold turkey and then try to pick it up here in a couple weeks, I will have already lost some of the progress that I've made.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. So, I guess, so would you say that the trumpet is the hardest horn to play, or is it not? Are they all have their own unique difficulties?
Yeah, they're all pretty unique in that. Trumpet being a high brass instrument is, I think the expectation that comes with it makes it pretty tough. People want you to step up and, just hit those high notes and scream. And so the lower brass, I think at times there might be a little bit of a lower expectation. Now, I'm not saying they're not hard because I can't pick up a trombone and play it worth a crap compared to the guys that I've been playing with who've been, obviously practice just like I do on their instrument. And they're all unique. Like a trombone has that slide that moves. Well, you have to know through muscle memory and practice how far to pull that slide out in intermittent sections to know what note you're on. Plus they use the embouchures in their mouth, the muscles around their lips as well, just like a trumpet. Just the mouthpiece is so much bigger and the bowl in the mouthpiece is deeper, so thus the sound coming out the horn is going to be bigger too. Same with a tuba or a sousaphone or baritone, any of those things. They're all pretty they all have their unique challenges, for sure.
Well, it's like, and the reason I asked that is just because, like, I know a lot of people that play guitar, and I'm sure they wouldn't say that they have the same level of skill on guitar as they do on bass, but it translates pretty well.
It does.
Switch between those. So I was curious if it was similar with horns like that.
Yeah, no, it's different. Like I know exactly what you mean. So I play guitar, and then I taught myself mandolin, and it's somewhat translated. And then I picked up bass one time because I needed to. And so, and yes, all the notes are the same on a bass, the frets and all that. You play it differently, obviously, but it's pretty similar. And you're using your hands. One hand's you're picking with, one hand you're fretting the notes with. Whereas brass, any woodwind, like I've never even tried a saxophone, a clarinet, a flute. That's a whole different monster, and I have great respect for the guys that do that and do it well. But like if I could try and grab a trombone, but there's no keys on it. It's the slide. It's totally different, and you're in a bass clef. As opposed to treble clef with the trumpet. So it's just it's a whole different thing. So I just stick to the trumpet.
So I guess obviously, given your background, you can at least read sheet music then. Is that correct?
Yeah, I learned that was one of the things. I know, like my mom and dad, when I was little, they really wanted that for me. They both had played brass instruments going through high school and stuff. And I wanted to be a drummer. I really wanted to play drums when I was a kid. And my mom wanted me to learn to read music. And so through that process, she said, you need to pick an instrument, one of these instruments. And she probably just didn't want to hear me banging on the drums all the time either. But she said, through that conversation, I knew that my dad had played trumpet, and she played a little bit of trumpet before she moved to French horn. And so I thought, well, I'll try that. And they took me down to Palin Music when it was on Walnut Street downtown, and we picked up a King trumpet, which I still have, and started doing some private lessons. And that was even before, because you couldn't be in music in elementary school. I think it was till fifth grade, and I was in third grade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I started taking private lessons when I was in third grade, and so then when I started in fifth grade, they put me in the sixth grade band, because I already knew how to do everything because of being in private lessons and playing at Palin's and everything. And so it kind of gave me a jump start. But yeah, I play, anytime I play trumpet, I'm going to either read sheet music that exists, or I'm going to listen to a song and write my own part out to accompany the song, or write the part that somebody else is playing. But I'm going to write it in note form because I can read it.
So you can just listen to a track and know what notes are being played, and then just copy that down on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible.
and I think that's been a big benefit and a reason I get asked to do things too. There's several good horn players in town, good trumpet players in town. But if someone called me tonight and said, what is this, Monday or whatever, and he said, hey, Thursday night we could really use you on these 3 or 4 songs. I would be able to show up Thursday and have the parts written and be ready to go. Because I can sit there and I can, pull up a song on YouTube. I can watch it. I can listen to it. If something stumps me, I'll sound it out on my horn. I can write it all out, and then I'm ready to roll.
So do you ever just again, I'm very ignorant when it comes to all of this stuff. So, but I assume this is true, but do you just hang out and jam out with people with the trumpet?
Right now, I could, if that called for right now. Honestly, I just don't have time to do that. There's a lot of open mic nights around town. You could probably go to open mic night every night, Monday through Thursday around, and maybe even some on the weekends that are out there. But I could go. And there's different groups that I could probably go to and just say, hey man, can I come in and sit in with you guys? But right now there's enough demand on with what I'm doing that I don't need to do that right now, but I could. Right. And and there's there are some jazz musicians, especially real strong jazz musicians, that will get called to do that. There's a new place downtown called the Hepcat, and I know there's a few other locations. The Dugout here in Springfield, they have jazz nights, and a lot of times, if I would show up with my trumpet, if I knew somebody in there, they would say, "Yeah, come up and just play a couple songs, and you just pick up on the key of the song, and and just complement it with what you play.
Yeah, I'm a huge music fan. I listen to music all the time, multiple hours a day probably, and it's disappointing because as much of a music fan as I am, I know nothing about it and can't identify like what might be making a sound that I might like in a song. Oh, yeah. So it's really hard to describe to someone like a part that I think is cool, because I like where it goes like do. Right. So that's sweet that you can read it and just listen to it and know what you're hearing. Yeah. Another buddy of mine, Misha, who typically provides the music for the show. Yeah. He is like, we went to a concert up in St. Louis. Have you ever been to the Pageant Theater?
Oh, I love that place. That's a great place to see a show.
It was so cool. The only concerts I've really been to are, other than like at local small venues here, are like Tool concerts, but those are at sold out arenas. You know what I mean? So it's a totally different thing. And the Pageant, we went and saw this guy named Jose Gonzalez, who is like an acoustic singer songwriter type. Yeah. And it was such the perfect venue. Like there was plenty of people still, but there wasn't a bad seat in the house.
Absolutely.
And everything is contained. So like if you wanted to get up and get a drink at the bar or something, you don't actually have to leave the room, like it's in the room with the stage still. Yeah. So you can it was incredible. But anyway, my buddy Misha, he was moving around the room because we were sitting on like one side of the stage, kind of underneath a speaker. And he got up a couple different times in the show and went and like listened from other areas just to like see how it sounded from a different spot in the room. Yeah. And I was just like, man, I mean, certainly I could stand up and walk around the room, but I don't have the capacity to appreciate those nuances, like that.
Well, and it's a good point, because the more, some people have that ear. Like I have pretty good pitch, like you're talking about listening to something like, if I'm listening to a trumpet part, especially just because I'm so cued into it, I can usually tell like what notes they're playing, like even without like I can say, oh yeah, okay, that's a C, or that's in this key, because if that's a C and he walked down to here, he's playing C, A sharp, F sharp, whatever, and so because I've played for so long, but there's some people that have perfect pitch, and it blows me away, those people. One guy that is in this Grandy's Bathwater group, who did tour with also and still does play with the Ozark Mountain Daredevils, is Bill Jones. And Bill Jones is a saxophone player. He plays all different saxophones, from tenor to bari to soprano. He does the whole thing, and he's fantastic at it. And putting this show together, it was almost to a point of annoyance, because he would say, no, play this note. And I'd be like, I am playing that note. He's like, no, you're not. He's like, no, play this note. And then I'd be like, that sounds just like what I'm playing. And he'd say, go down half a step or whatever. And I would. And he's like, there, that's the note. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Dang it.
This is a weird analogy, but have you ever seen the documentary on Netflix, Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, it's about this guy who's like, I mean, I don't know if he's still alive now, I guess, but he's in his 90s, and he's made sushi since he was like 20 years old, and he doesn't like to take weekends. He doesn't like to take vacation, holiday. Yeah. He literally just makes sushi. It's like his favorite thing to do, and it's considered like the best sushi in literally all of the world.
Wow.
But anyway, he has a guy who is like his understudy or whatever, and that guy was making this like cake, I think, that's made from eggs or something. So it's kind of like a quiche kind of thing. They don't call it that, but that's effectively what it is. And this guy made the quiche for 2 years before Jiro, his master or whatever, the teacher, finally told him that it was good enough. For 2 years daily, he would bring him this cake, and he'd be like, no, he would taste it and be like, no, that's not right. Do it again.
Yeah.
And it shows in the documentary after he turns it in after 2 years of this, and he's like, he tastes it and he's like, yeah, that's good. And that's it. Like, he doesn't celebrate with him or anything. And the dude just starts bawling. He just starts weeping because, I mean, his life has been trying to make this cake, you know? Yeah. So that was your experience with trying to hit the right note.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Months and months. I finally did it.
That's funny.
Well, it's funny that you say it because, you're talking about when I stopped playing. So if I rewinded back to when I was coming out of college trying to get a job and, newly married, and then we started a family and all these few years within there where I didn't play much at all. If I started playing again, honestly, I would have thought I sounded pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, I picked it up and maybe I couldn't play for very long, but you think, hey, that's not too bad. But now that I've gone through like this experience with these pros and these guys and played, I look back, if I was to, mentor my old self, I would be like, yeah, you got a long way to go. You got a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? It's like,
don't take this on stage.
Yeah, you're not ready. Your cheesecake is not ready.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. So something you said earlier that I kind of struck me as surprising, which again is just because I don't know how any of it works, but you've been talking about how it's like difficult to play a high note, which sounds like kind of like how people will struggle to hit a high note like in singing.
Yeah.
But with and again, I just relate everything to guitar because that's the only thing that I even have a cursory knowledge of. But like on a guitar, it's not harder to play a high note than it is to play a low note. You know what I mean? So I didn't realize that or like on a piano, but I didn't realize with the horn instrument, it would be more difficult to play the higher note. And I guess that's to do with like the mouth stuff you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it is. It's twofold because, part of it is your ear for knowing, to hit the high note in key. So to hit it correctly, you have to be able to hear it. But then you also have to have the breath support. In guitar, one finger you put on the fret and the string you want, and the other one you hit that string on the, down by the sound hole, and you have your note. In trumpet, you not only have to push the correct amount of air for volume and for pitch, but then you have to also configure your mouth. So you really have to squeeze the sides of your mouth together, pinch the your lips really tight as you blow to make the pitch of the horn and note go up. And so there are guys that I'm trying to think of a good way to say it. So like a middle C is a tuning note. It'd be like right around in there. So I can hit a octave above that. So you take it up, a full octave higher, and then I can go a few notes above that. There's guys that make a living by playing what's called the super C. So you have your tuning note, you go up a full octave. So, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then you go up a full another octave, which,
oh wow,
yeah. And so these guys, but they're also, it's like Arturo Sandoval and the Rashawn that plays for Dave Matthews Band, and there's guys around here that can do that too. I have never been able to do that. I can go up to, after playing all these months, I can get to about E above C. So I can hit the high C regularly, and I can go up maybe even to an F now, which, I can go up a couple notes higher than that. But good Lord, I don't know. But it's technique, and it's practice, and it's breath support, and it's just knowing how to do it and how to really clinch down and push that out. But it's totally different than playing a stringed instrument. Where you just where it needs to go, and you hit that with your fingers.
Right. So something else that you said earlier was you were talking about when you sat with the guys kind of in the horn section or whatever for this recent gig that you did. and you said that you guys were like going really slow and practicing slow. So, I know in like, let's say like martial arts, for example, it's common that you'll practice techniques in a very slow way so that you master the technique before you kind of start speeding it up, as
Right.
opposed to just flailing around. So is that
Right.
true in music as well,
Yeah,
or at
it
least
is,
okay?
and that translates to anything, whether it's
Hmm.
singing or playing guitar or anything. A lot of musicians will call that woodshedding, which just means you're going and you're chopping it down to the bare bones. So maybe you have a line that's like 20 measures. Well, maybe you play one measure 30 times, and then you move to measure
Mm,
two and you play it 30 times. And then you move to measure three and you play it 30 times. Then you play measures 1 through 3 30 times. You haven't even looked down at the rest of it yet, because you need
right.
to get the technique on those down. But that's the muscle memory you're developing. You're familiarizing yourself with the tune, you're familiarizing yourself with the order of the notes, and you're developing that technique, like just like the martial arts or anything. And when you play it slowly, your ear becomes accustomed to how it goes. So as you speed it up and you start going faster and faster and faster, it becomes second nature to you by the time that you get to
Hmm.
the point where you can move further into the song.
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, yet another yet another comparison of trumpet to guitar and bass.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I like Buckethead quite a bit. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever listened to his music.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't like I think he's in or was in like Guns N' Roses
Right.
for a while.
Yeah, I think so.
That's not my jam, so I don't really care for that Buckethead music. But he actually has some really really beautiful albums that are like more down tempo and just instrumental. And
Mm-hmm.
but that dude plays guitar in some crazy ways. Like he does some crazy stuff, uh, just physically with it, or like Les Claypool, where he like does the slap bass from Primus or
Oh
whatever,
yeah.
right?
Right. Yep.
So, is there anything similar to that people like? Have you ever encountered anyone that experiments with the instrument in kind of a non-traditional way
For
with
trumpet.
a horn? Yeah.
Yeah, so what you can really find, is kind of you can customize your sound to the genre of music you're playing, for one. So
Mhm.
like, a lot of times, if you play more kind of traditional or slower jazz, you might, add a little more air to your tone, as you
Mm.
play, and you might, just kind of back off on the volume and kind of finesse the song a little bit more. You can also get a different instrument. Like I have two trumpets. I have a silver trumpet that is lacquered. That's the one I've been playing more of here lately. And it's good. It gives you a good sharp tone that cuts through a full rock band.
Mm.
The other trumpet that I have, is a '69 Olds Mendez trumpet, which is non-lacquered. It has a more, buttery, darker tone. And so,
Mhm.
I would use that for blues or jazz.
Mhm.
So you can customize your instrument to what kind of music you're playing. Then you have mutes. So a real basic way to change your tone on a trumpet would be a mute. So like Miles Davis played most of his music with a Harmon mute. So you get this real cool, tone that comes through that sounds real mellow,
Mm.
but then at the same time, you can use a plunger, and you get that wah 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 sound to it as you move the
Mm.
plunger out. You can use, a bucket mute, where it just makes your whole tone kind of even darker and more muffled, but it can lend itself to the kind of music that you're playing. And
Hmm.
some trumpet players use pedals too, just like a guitar player. So you can, like one of the guys in the Grannies group, he has a harmonizer, so you can tune it in to where I may be playing, in the key of, C, but yet you get your tone plus coming through the, speakers or the PA system. You can tune it down to another note, so you harmonize with yourself through the pedal. So it sounds like two trumpets
Hmm.
playing. Yeah, and you can use a
That's
wah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it can be very cool. You can use distortion. You can use, some guys use wah pedals just like guitar. So as you're playing your notes, you're moving it with your foot, so you get that wah 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 wah, kind of sound to it, real different.
Mm-hmm.
So some people take that their tone kind of on an avant-garde kind of movement where they want to really go out there and do something different with their tone. I haven't really gotten into the pedals much, but I use mutes in a lot of different ways. I played in the group the Kidders, which was also Margot and the Kidders, and I would typically use a Harmon mute, and then the Harmon mute also has a stem that you can push into the mute, so you can get a real mellow, soft sound that's really cool. That sounds kind of old school, like 20s and 30s jazz sound. But then you put this stem in, and you can just put your hand over it and get a really old trumpet sound that has that nice wah sound to it. So it's real cool ways that you can mess around and with your tone. Yeah. So there's a whole world out there, Walker, a whole world.
Yeah. I was going to say, I actually have a much deeper appreciation for the trumpet and just horn music in general now, I think, after this conversation.
Well, good.
Clearly, I didn't know anything based on the questions I keep asking. But
and it really lends itself to what kind of music you're playing, because like if I'm not going to have the same breath support or tone when I'm playing with a keyboard player and a bass and me, or if I'm playing with a full rock band, or if I'm playing with a marching band, or if I'm playing classical music, you kind of tailor what you're doing. A lot of times in orchestral music that has trumpets, you're playing a lot of staccatos, because the strings are going to be so flowy that the horn parts are going to come through in a different timbre, in a different way. Whereas, if I was to do that when it was just me, a piano player and a bass player, it's gonna be disruptive to the type of music. So you want to play a little more mellow, and you want to, bring your tone together to complement the other instruments you're playing with.
So earlier we were talking about how you have the ability to read and then write down, music as you listen to it, or if it's given to you, you can obviously read it that way. Have you ever just sat down and written your own songs from scratch though?
Yes, I have some. Most of the time I do it to someone else's music. So, like the songs that I sent you from my friend Nate White, those songs, we would go and I would sit, and that's kind of you're talking about jamming out. That's kind of what I would do with him, where he invited me out. He was working on a couple new albums, and he said, I want you to be a part of this, and I'd love for you to play trumpet. He said, but you've put what you want and what you hear to these songs. So I would just sit there, and he would play the song, and I would listen to it, and I would just kind of play, and if something struck me right, then I would write it down. And then I would keep listening, and we would adjust it and make sure that, it was what he wanted, but it was what I wrote. It's not,
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not that often that I sit down and compose, something for trumpet. I've not really done that, but I have added trumpet parts to music that didn't have trumpet parts. I do that all the time.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's a good segue. Because like you said, you did send me a couple of those songs, and I wanted to play those, in this show. So I guess the first one we'll listen to is Red Velvet Blues, which is track 10 on the album Passenger, which is a Nate White album.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and listen to that. All right. Well, that was super dope. I really enjoyed it whenever you had sent it to me originally. So that Red Velvet Blues, that's one of the songs that you worked on in what you were just describing before we listened?
Yeah, and so not only is that example of original work, but it's also original or an example of tone and changing using mutes in the and effects, because when working with Nate is a rock artist. I mean, that's what he does. A lot of the music that he does is like heavy rock.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little bit of a change for him, but he had some things he wanted to write about. He had some songs in his head, and so I just tried to help him develop those by adding trumpet to them. And so I used Harmon mutes on that one as well as the other one that I had sent you. And then we used some things like reverb and some different effects that he had in his editing software when we did the recordings to add that kind of ambiance to match the song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, I'm not a big jazz listener. I've been just at a few handful of times in my life, been to places where they're playing jazz and enjoyed it. But I just haven't really sought out jazz albums, I guess. But I listen to a lot of electronic music, and like drum and bass is a genre that I'm pretty into. And there's actually quite a bit of drum and bass that features horn type music in it. Have you ever been around that kind of stuff at all?
Yeah, somewhat. There's a few bands that I listen to, and I don't know if I call them bands or artists, but
Right.
and of course, like right away, it's I'm having trouble remembering all the, like. There's a couple that are more considered DJs that it's like not R2D2, but it's based on, it's like RJ.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
I think it's RJD2 something. It's something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Misha will mock us for this because he
Okay.
loves them. But yes. Anyway.
Yeah, and so that's a prime example of something that Nate and I have delved into as a separate project, just because it's kind of a jazz fusion with like hip hop beats and heavy bass, strong drum beats, and then having some overlaying horn lines that kind of bring the song alive and make it real danceable, that kind of thing that he does. And so I really dig that kind of music a lot. And Nate, with part of what he's doing, he dives into all sorts of genres. That's one that we've kind of messed around with. Is he'll lay down a bass track, he'll create a beat, and then he's just like, hey, whatever you feel, man, just let's record a few trumpet licks here, and so that's a lot of fun to play.
Yeah. When I was asking about writing the music earlier, I was curious because again, Misha, he will kind of, and not to, he certainly does not have the success of a Trent Reznor, so I don't mean to pick the biggest star possible to compare it to, but that, like, he has several albums that he's made, but he kind of does it with the Trent Reznor approach, where he sits and composes all of the different parts himself.
Yeah.
And then produces it. Now, to play it live, he would obviously have to, hire a band because he couldn't play all the instruments at once.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's super fascinating that people can do that, because I was in choir when I was in junior high, and I was in choir for maybe, I don't know, a few weeks, and they came to me and they were like, you are so good at counting. And I was like, thank you. And they were like, what we want you to do instead of sing is count and play this triangle. And you'll just do that during the songs. And I was like, promotion.
Yeah.
Later in life, I realized that it's because I just sound horrible and I'm super loud. So I'm sure I was overpowering other students that could actually sing a little bit. So good on them for putting a positive spin
That's
on it.
right. They were putting you,
And then
it's just like the whole good to great thing. They're just putting you on the right seat in the bus.
Right. And then I also did play handbells for a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure was not good at. But handbells was a little easier because you literally, each bell is one note.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as demanding. There's not a lot of changing. You just kind of learn what your note looks like on the page, and then
grab that bell.
Do a little ding noise. Yeah, it's pretty good. I wore the little white gloves and everything.
Oh yeah, that's legit, man.
Oh yeah, it was. I went to a Christian junior high school,
yeah,
a Lutheran school, and so it was part of that. Although I don't think I actually went and to the concerts at the church, which was probably disappointing for whoever was the instructor for that. But that's the story of my life. Disappointing, folks. So we've talked a little bit about different genres of music, but I don't mean to say what's your favorite or something, because that's too loaded, but I guess, what do you find yourself listening to recently when you're just listening to music for pleasure?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Still
I know.
too loaded.
Yeah, and it really, honestly, it has to do with what I'm involved in at the time lately. I have my favorites, like Dave Matthews Band, or Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds acoustic is probably some of my favorite music. It's a kind of a genre encompassing group. They will go from rock to jazz within one song, to bluegrass, and so I really enjoy that, because I think I have such a wide appreciation of different kinds of music. So I really like that a lot. But at the same time, like if I'm developing songs or working on a project like I do with my daughter, I tend to gravitate towards what I'm preparing for. So I'll listen to the Lumineers or the Civil Wars, or that kind of music, Mumford and Sons and stuff like that. Kind of gets my mind prepared for that, and then I can decide on what we need to play and get ready for those things. When I'm getting ready for Granny's Bathwater, I know I'm listening to their stuff, and I'm listening to Earth, Wind and Fire, and Grand Funk Railroad, and the Tower of Power Horns and stuff like that, and getting real pumped up through that kind of music. But yet, if I'm, I play with the Springfield Community Jazz Ensemble. It's like a volunteer big band in town. And so when I'm headed on to play with one of those gigs, I'll go to my Prime Music and dial up, some swing band music. It's just that's kind of what I have to do, because of where I put myself and the availability that I've opened up for myself to play so many different kinds of genres. I kind of have to get my mind directed on that path when I'm on that project.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So, for me, like I said earlier, I listen to music all the time, and for me, like music, and not that this is unique to me, but music just has a very deep kind of emotional connection where,
absolutely,
I pick different kinds of music to listen to, kind of based on what like if I need to mow the yard, I put on gangster rap, right? So that way I
obviously
can pack the yard, I'm actually not kidding. I really do that, but I have an appreciation for what I call pop rap. I mean, I like old school rap, like Tupac is probably my favorite rapper of all time.
Oh yeah.
And I wouldn't put, Migos in the same category with Tupac. But I can listen to some stuff like that. So, I mean, just maybe talk a little bit about the emotional side of music for you. I mean, obviously you're playing it, so it's different than just listening or consuming it, but do you find yourself in that same kind of space where different things kind of complement different moods or different, places you find yourself at?
That absolutely. And that's a big part of it. And the reason I kind of stumble over my words is it's like there's a soundtrack to our lives. I believe, music will take you wherever you're at, and take you where you were the first time you heard that song, or what kind of life experience you had at a certain point that relates to that song. And I think that's so unique. And not only that, but you can hear a song for the first time, and because of like the way it was composed and the chord structure, I mean, it can cause you to cry, or it can cause you to, you know what I mean? Or it can cause you to get so excited and so pumped up. And there's that emotional aspect of it that a true artist, can play with and toy with, and knows how to use that to really connect with people.
Yeah, like I can watch a movie that's sad, and it's rare that I'm become emotional in watching that. But then I've told this story before on the pod, I think, but it was, I don't know, it was in the last year sometime. I was in a Walmart, and I heard the Tracy Chapman song "Fast Car."
Oh yeah,
like over the overhead speaker, and like that song doesn't have a deep significance to me. I don't have a memory associated with it. I didn't grow up on it, but I know it. I mean, I've heard it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for whatever reason, it just grabbed me. And then I left the store and was driving home, and I put it on, and yeah, it definitely just, I was crying while I was driving home, and I don't know why, because it's not like I had to look up the lyrics when I got home to see what the thing's even about, you know?
Yeah.
Or like my buddy Misha one time, he made an album and gave it to me, and there was some song on it, and same thing, like I have no idea what the lyrics are. I don't know what it's about. So it's not the story that's being told. And same thing, just straight waterworks. And I told him that, and he was like, really? That's surprising. Because, I mean, it's not like a particularly sad song necessarily, you know, but yeah, like you said, it's just, I don't know, the way it's composed sometimes, I guess, just hits you right.
I know there is a science behind it that I don't understand. That's beyond me, as far as, you know, chord structure, how to deliver that, you know, that those feelings just simply through sound waves, and, you know, that's kind of beyond me. But I know it exists, and I believe it, because obviously, yeah, you'll be listening to some classical piece with no words, so it's not like you're relating to, you know, lyrics that someone is, you know, saying to you to tell a story. It's all from the music. And so as these you know, chords are being struck, or the volume increases, or the speed of it, it can change your heart rate. It can change, you know, your emotional stability at that point. And it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that, and have that experience a lot. I don't know. Yeah, I love music so much. That's why I was so excited to have you come on the show and talk about music, your music, because it's just, I don't know. To me, it like, I'm a huge gamer. I own over 1,000 PC games and love video games. But there's the old cliche of, like, if you had to go to a stranded island and could only take one thing, what would it be? And it would definitely be, like, you know, Spotify before it would be a video game.
Right.
Because there's just so much to it. So anyone who's listened to the show very much, especially lately, since I now do a Tool quote of the week, will know that Tool is very near and dear to me. Are you yourself a Tool listener?
You know, I don't listen to it enough. I have from the past, and then I've listened a little bit to the new album that came out. Yeah, and you know, I'm not one that can really pick out, like, the name of the song, but I appreciate what I think I appreciate most is just the musicianship of Tool.
Yes,
they're so good, and and so it's one of these deals that more and more musicians that I get involved with, it's when that album drops, like every group I was a part of, you'd show up to rehearsal. Oh my God, have you heard the new Tool? Oh, it's so great, you know. And so you're like, oh man, I need to clue in on these guys, you know. I know how good they are, and they cover, like, their fan base, because of how good their musicianship is so vast and wide. I mean, you know, people that listen to all kinds of genres of music love Tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's now I can do, probably because I was a kid when it was coming out, but I can do, like, 90s grunge type, like, you know, STP or Pearl Jam, or I don't know, Nirvana, that kind of genre. I don't absolutely love it, but I can listen to that and enjoy it.
Right.
But as far as anything more modern, like, I really just don't listen to rock music outside of Tool. Like, and I hold it on such a pedestal that I'm like, it's more like electronic music if it was played with heavy metal instruments. Which I don't know that that's actually true or fair, but
I understand what you mean.
It's me that kind of same feeling. Like, it's weird when I go to Tool shows and people are like, "Oh, I fucking love rock and roll!" Like, woo, and it's like, really, that's what you get out of this? Like, that's not what I get out of this.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
But, well, fair enough. I won't press you anymore on the Tool. I just had to ask.
I have a fair appreciation for them. I just don't listen to them enough. It sounds
well. It's good that you said that, or I would have stopped the recording immediately.
You're like, and delete. We're done here.
Dude, when I was in my early 20s, I was so insufferable. I used to be that guy. Like, if I would ask someone, "Do you like Tool?" If they said that they just hadn't heard it before, then that would be a fair statement.
Yeah.
But if they were like, "Yeah, I don't know, I'm just not really into it," it's like, I don't really want to talk to you anymore. So, which is super dumb and pretentious, and again, insufferable of me. But that's where I was. Um, so I think I want to end the show here, which in a few moments with the other track that you sent, which is Brown Sugar.
Yeah.
Which is track 7 on the album Princess Superhero, which is again a Nate White album.
Yeah.
So talk maybe a little bit about what went into making that song.
That the process was very similar to Red Velvet Blues, and there's a couple other ones too, but it was the same kind of thing. Now he put this track, Princess Superhero, is actually like a heavy rock album, so this track blends into that. And you can kind of hear it, the undertones and some of the guitar parts and stuff that are in it, but the process of it was the same thing. He was like, come out to, he has kind of a smaller studio, and he says, come out to my studio space, and I just want to play this stuff for you, and see what moves you, and see what you would want to put on this. And just at the time that, when I sat there and listened to it, what I played was what I heard. And from what I remember as well, when we did that, this one, there was a multi-recording track. So I would record myself playing in certain notes like higher, but then I was like, man, it could really use something lower. So we just record more trumpet parts. So it's myself playing over myself to kind of layer and thicken the sound in there.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then we added a little bit of effects to make it sound like it was in a bigger room, and then make it sound like there's a little bit of reverb, so a little bit of echo effect to it that just kind of felt like it matched what he had already laid down with the guitars and everything.
Right. A lot of heavy use of auto-tune on the vocals. I'm totally kidding. That's not a thing at all. That is a trend that I am not a fan of.
No,
by the way.
nor am I.
Yeah. I don't understand it. And especially on rap stuff, it's like, just stop trying to sing.
Right.
Like, that's not how you made it.
I've got an idea for you.
Right.
Just don't
we all
sing.
saw Ja Rule in like 2001 when he did that. And it's like, this already has been done and it's terrible.
Yeah.
So please stop.
Well, you're talking to me about genres too. I mean, that's really one thing that I kind of gravitate towards it, jazz and even like bluegrass and some music like that. Like I enjoy raw, unpolished, on the spot music more than I do overproduced or highly produced music. Like I'd rather go listen to a group live that has zero effects or even zero microphones. They're playing their instruments or they're singing. That I feel more of a connection to that than I do some of the other music that's a little more made with machines, I guess you could say.
Sure. Yeah, again, I've almost only exclusively been to Tool concerts, so I have a very limited frame of reference, but that's actually what a lot of people say about that's so remarkable, is that the concert sounds exactly like the album, which it does. I listen to the albums a lot and then go to the show, but I guess that's not always the case. There's some bands that might have a great album, but there's a lot of work done in the studio, and then when they get on stage, they're not able to really recreate that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You see that quite often.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Corey, I really, really appreciate you joining the podcast this evening. It's been a blast talking with you. I know that you're kind of a mercenary trumpet player at this point, but is there anywhere that people should be trying to find you or look you up or reach out to you? Is there any contact method that you've got that you'd like to share?
So a couple things I'm involved in. One project that you can look up on Facebook as well as Instagram is called Sydadre, and that's SYDADRE, and that's me and my daughter. It stands for Sid and her padre, Sydadre. And so we're on Facebook and Instagram. But then as far as trumpet work, just on Facebook and Instagram as well. If I'm going to be in an upcoming show, then I just put it under my name on my page and throw it out there as far as what's coming up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I will be sure to put links to those in the show notes for anyone who's interested. Yeah, man, it's been a real blast. And like I said earlier, we'll play it out with Brown Sugar. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Walker.
All right, well, that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much again, Corey Johnson, for joining the show. Thank you also to Corey and Nate White for providing us some really great music to feature in the show. As always, thank you, Misha Zarins, for providing music for the rest of the show. I really appreciate you guys listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and have a great week.